since this is some content is somewhat will start now itself. This is Sri Lankan environment and cultural heritage. Actually, this is first time I am doing this lecture because previously I did some several different modules, but this time ISL requested me to do this particular topic. Okay, I will try my best to do whatever the possible things what I know. Now here the expected outcome is we we have to aware the Sri Lankan maritime boundaries, exclusive economic zone, resources within the territorial waters, ancient heritage, vandalism, preservation, over-exploitation of hill country against high environmental sensitivity, history. Uh, Actually, all my notes will cover all these topics. Now, I think you know about the Sri Lanka. Now here, just I want to give you some brief introduction. I think you know about Sri Lankan lat long coordinates, maximum length of the island. Then and now here our main scope. Here we have to learn about our coastal resources. That's the main thing. Sri Lankan maritime boundary as well as the resources within the coastal belt, and how do we use these resources into our country's development, and what kind of thing engineers can perform to enhance these activities. Then our total land area. Now, what do you mean by land area? The aggregate of all land within international boundaries and coastlines, excluding water area. Water area also, it's a considerable amount. That means, since Sri Lanka is a small country, we have some big lakes, reservoirs, and rivers that we call it as the water area. And land area means it's excluding the water area, but when you identify the total land area, that means it's including land area plus, here mainly you have to emphasize the inland water bodies, not the external water bodies. Now here coastal internal waters may included, but territorial seas are not included. Now we'll see the definitions of what do you mean by the territorial sea and other things. Then our main scope is Sri Lanka maritime boundary. Now this maritime boundary between Sri Lanka and India is divided at the three different sea areas. One is we call the Bay of Bengal in the north, the Pork Strait in the middle, and the Gulf of Mannar in the south. It is about 45 kilometer maximum distance between the Sri Lanka and India through Pork Strait and Dhanushkodi on the Indian side, and Talaimanna on Sri Lankan side is a minimum 16 kilometer distance. I will show you the maritime boundary in my next slide. Both countries have over 12 to 22 kilometers of water and signed bilateral agreements on the maritime boundary as per United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. Now, this is very important thing. Every country which having a sea area that this United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea will every country has to adhere on this convention. In 1974, actually, our country had an agreement between the Sri Lanka and India in the Pork Strait and Pork Bay, confirmed Sri Lanka's sovereignty for the Pork Bay area. Agreement stipulate that each state, India and Sri Lanka, shall have sovereignty and exclusive jurisdiction and control over the waters, the islands, the continental shelf, and subsoil on its sides of the maritime boundary. Now, these words we will learn later. Now here main the date is this was agreement was came into force on 8 July 1974, and I think you may have heard with this agreement Katchatew Island was given to Sri Lankan waters. Now that's the Katchatew was the far most away in the Sri Lanka. It's somewhat away, but that's why Indian fishermen and Sri Lankan Navy had every time some confrontations, or maybe they think this particular land belongs to them. I think before this agreement, Hatchathiv Island main controlling part was carried out by the Tamil Nadu, India, but with this agreement that was given to Sri Lanka. But it's like a island in between these borders. Now, this is the Sri Lankan maritime boundary. You can see there is a line. Now here all the things are now our main, now since we are an island nation, only one side we are adjacent to another country. That means Indian territory is like that. All the other areas, Sri Lanka having a sea. Now I think when you look at this kind of countries, some countries, majority of the island nations, they are very much far away from other main countries. But now in our case, this particular length is very, somewhere around 45 kilometers in somewhere, some places around 22 kilometers. That's the thing. Now that is we call the Bay of Walk. And this is Gulf of Mannar, and other main area, it's the Indian Ocean we are having. Now, this is the maritime boundary. Now, when we define the maritime boundary, there are different definitions they identified for the define the maritime boundaries. Now, here I am do not go into the very much technical details. Maybe some of you may have known better than me, because I also collected these informations, and during my some projects we have collected so many information. Those things also I have included in this lecture about the LNG terminals and other things. We will learn those things. Now here you can see this this blue color region, that is we call the exclusive economic zone and pollution prevention zone, belongs to Sri Lanka. Now you can see our country land area, total land area is 65,000 square kilometers. Now you can see Sri Lanka having a exclusive economic zone more than our country. Now it's like around 4 times Sri Lankan country. Maybe it depends on the values. Now here you can see, now this is this sea area belongs to Sri Lankan government. Now we will learn what are the advantages or benefits of having such a vast area of sea area to a particular country. That we will learn later. Now this is the outer limit of exclusive economic zone. Then now this is also belongs to some international sea area. Now up to this area, Sri Lankan government has to do a lot of legal and other rescue missions. Now we learn about those things. Now in addition to that, now here you can see India-Sri Lanka maritime boundaries there. Now here you can say EEZ belongs to India. Here EEZ belongs to Maldives. Then This is our outer limit of the exclusive zone. In addition to that, in this northern part, there are some specialized historical waters belongs to Sri Lanka. Now it is called the historical waters in territorial sea and historical waters in internal sea. Now what do you mean by the territorial sea? What do you mean by the contiguous zone? Now actually these territorial sea, contiguous zone also within the economic zone of uh, within the within the exclusive zone. I think first you have to get some idea about this. Uh, 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 we will learn one by one. Okay. Now, what do you mean by territorial sea? Now territorial sea is the coastal belt very near or adjacent to the mainland. Okay. Now that's those definitions. I think you may should understand. I am not asking you to memorize all the things, but just get the idea. Now, whatever the coastal belt very near to the mainland, it's called the territorial sea. Then contiguous zone and exclusive economic zone. Now, exclusive economic zone means it includes territorial sea and contiguous zone as well. Now, every country having the territorial sea. The concept of territorial sea is defined under international law as the belt of coastal waters extending at most 12 nautical miles from the baseline. Now, that's normal definition of the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. Now, it's like that. Now, this distance they mention as the 12 nautical miles. The territorial sea is regarded as the sovereign territory of the state, although foreign ships, both military and civilians, are allowed innocent passage through it. Now that is belong to particular country, but now this United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea that will request or that will guide every country, they have to allow the safe passage to the foreign ships. This sovereignty extends to the airspace over the territorial sea as well as the seabed and subsoil. Now you can see it's like uh, it's up to seabed or the subsoil as well as the airspace over the territorial sea also belongs to the particular country. Several key points about the territorial sea are outlined in the United Nations Convention of Law of Sea, which provides a comprehensive framework governing all aspects of ocean space. Here are some important aspects of territorial sea. Now, main thing is sovereignty. Now, I think we know that particular word. Now, Sri Lanka or every country we call as a sovereignty states. Now, sovereignty means now before 1948 we didn't have sovereignty. Okay, maybe British or Dutch or Portuguese countries, they control the Sri Lanka. Now, coastal states have sovereignty over the territorial sea, similar to their sovereignty over land territory. This includes the right to exploit natural resources within these waters. Now, that's the main thing we have to focus. Now, whatever the resources available within this territorial sea that directly belong to this particular country. Now, that's the main thing. Now, under this convention, they have clearly identified what do you mean by the sovereignty. Now, country having the sovereignty, that means land area as well as the territorial sea also belongs to the this territorial sea also belong to the country which are covered with the territorial sea. Then other main thing is this convention very clearly say you have to allow the innocent passage. Now that's a must because now sometimes the ships, now 12 nautical miles means maybe another country may have very near, but now in Sri Lanka, only India is in on the northern side. The problem is our waters are shallow waters. Because of that, the crossings over the, now here you can't have the main shipping line due to the shallow waters along this area. Now this historical water area having some shallow waters, because of that main shipping lines like that, it needs around 17 meter, 15 meter depth, that is not available within this area. Because of that, all the ships which are using southern part of the Sri Lanka. Then, while coastal states control the territorial sea, this convention allows the right of innocent passage. This means that ships of all states, whether coastal or landlocked, enjoy the right of innocent passage through the territorial sea. Innocent passage is defined as passing through waters in a manner not prejudicial to the peace, good order, or security of the coastal state. Certain restrictions can be imposed by the coastal state, but they cannot impede passage that is considered as innocent. Okay, maybe some illegal passage, this coastal state can intervene and take custody of these particular ships. Now you can hear so many news items. Sri Lankan Navy has taken into the custody of illegal fishermen, so maybe the drug dealers like that. Now it's not innocent passage. Then other main thing is criminal and civil jurisdiction. The coastal state can exercise jurisdiction over foreign ships passing through the territorial sea to prevent infringement of its laws and regulations within its territorial sea. However, there are limitations to the exercise of jurisdiction, especially concerning the passage of warships and other government ships operated for non-commercial purposes. Now, that's also a very important thing. Now, this criminal and civil jurisdiction should be carried out within the particular country's legal system. Now, you may wonder why this, our recent ships, those were under fire or maybe the damage, they are now having the jurisdictions in Singapore ports and other things. It's up to these shipping lines and governments. They can decide then go for a case in international courts, but still the jurisdiction within the particular country. Now that has given through the UN Convention itself. Then regulations and laws. The coastal state may enact laws governing navigation, protection of navigation channels, the protection of marine environment, and customs, fiscal systems, immigration, or sanitary measures related to the territorial sea. Uh, the rights and responsibilities related to the territorial sea are crucial for the sovereignty of coastal states, the regulation of maritime traffic, and the protection of marine resources. Now, most of the resources are distributed along the territorial sea, and whatever the resources within the territorial sea that particular country can utilize, but they have to every time comply with the marine environmental protection agreements. That's also very important thing. Now, when a country wants to extract these marine resources, they may have to comply with the marine environmental protection agreements. Those are also like international agreements. Although resources belong to a particular country, they have to carry out these environmental impact assessments and other things. Now, we have learned about the territorial sea. Then, next one is we call the contiguous zone. That is, now this is, it's around 12 nautical miles. Now, from away from the 12 nautical miles, that is, uh, now that is we call the contiguous zone. Now, beyond the territorial sea, a coastal state may claim a contiguous zone extending up to 24 nautical miles from the baseline. Now, it's like that initial 12 nautical miles, we call it as the territorial sea. Then between 12 to 24 nautical miles, that zone is identified as the contiguous zone, where it can exercise control to prevent infringement of its customs, fiscal, immigration, or sanitary laws, regulation within its territory or territorial sea. It's like similar to the territorial sea. Overall, the continuous zone serves as a buffer zone between the coastal state, territorial sea, and high seas, allowing the state to exercise limited jurisdiction to prevent and punish certain offences while respecting the rights of innocent passage for foreign vessels. Now, that means when something happens far away than the 12 nautical miles, then that particular country do not have a very strong legal background to claim the laws within the particular country. If it's within the territorial sea, definitely it's within that particular country. Now, there are some exceptions for this particular zone. Now, that is we call as the contiguous zone. Now, in some other definitions, we call as the continental shelf. Now, here I am not going into the details. It's similar to the territorial sea, but now here it's mentioned as limited jurisdiction to prevent and punish certain offenses. But in territorial sea, that particular country having the full authority. Now, other thing, what do you mean continental shelf? Now, this continental shelf is the submerged beneath of shallow waters adjacent to the shore. Now, under that mainly related to the, now I told this territorial sea, it's belong to, all the things belongs to the territorial sea. The sovereignty extends to the airspace over territorial sea as well as the seabed and subsoil. Now, this seabed and subsoil, they call it as the continental shelf. Is the extended portion of the continent that lies submerged beneath the shallow waters adjacent to the shore. It is part of the continental crust and extended from shoreline to continental slope, which marks the beginning of ocean basin. The width of continental shelf varies greatly depending on factors such as geological history, tectonic activity, and sea level changes. Now, this continental shelf is the area beneath the shallow waters adjacent to the shore. Now, okay, maybe in the territory, now that part belongs to the territorial water. Now, mainly there are so many definitions. Now, if you go through how to define the continental shelf, there are so many definitions. Now, here you can see key features. Now, someone can ask whether our total shore area of the territorial seas belongs to identified as the continental shelf. If these things are uh, the parameters which are defined the continental shelf. Now, to define these things, actually every country should have proper details undersea surveys and all the things. The gradient of the continental shelf is relatively gentle compared to the continental slope. It typically has a slight slope of less than 1 degree. Now, you can imagine now this gradient of 1 degree may change in sometimes maybe change within maybe let's say 500 meters. Some areas it can go around more than that. The depth of the continental shelf varies but is generally shallow, ranging from few meters to few hundred meters below sea level. This shallow depth allows sunlight to penetrate, supporting a rich ecosystem of marine life. Now, so many definitions. Now, sunlight should reach to the seabed. Now, that kind of definitions are identified in these definitions. Here, do not go into in details because your questions are very descriptive. And here, just looking at your, here I am checking mainly your knowledge on the resources and the advantages about this concept, that means resources. Uh, when you write your answers, you can elaborate these definitions as well. Now, normally in this continental shelf, sediment accumulation you can see. Now, why most of the rivers, all these rivers are in with the sea, then so many things will accumulate. And also the sea sand. The continental shelf is often covered with sediment eroded from adjacent landmass. The sediment can accumulate over time, forming features like sandbars, mudflats, and submerged banks. Now, in Sri Lanka, when you look at the Sri Lankan coastal belt, you can see different features. Now, when you go to the northern part, you can see so many submerged banks you can see. The other main thing is this continental shelf. Now, when you look at the undersea seabed, there are so many resources are there. Now, these minerals, mainly the minerals, continental shelves are often rich in natural resources such as oil in some countries, natural gas and minerals. In our case, we are having maybe the Pulmude area, you can see the minerals. These resources can be extracted through offshore drilling and mining operations. Then what are the economic importance? Now that's the main thing in this continental shelf. The continental shelf is economically significant for coastal nations as it provides valuable resources, supports fisheries, and offers opportunities for tourism and recreational activities. Now, in tourism, you can see in Hikkaduwa, that southern part, tourists are, and local tourists as well, they are diving to observe the corals and other sea features. Then jurisdictions, nations have jurisdiction over resources within continental shelf up to certain extent, typically 200 nautical miles from their baseline as defined by the United Nations Convention. Now, let's say now some countries may have very long continental shelf, but this convention says typically 200 nautical miles, but in our case, now other main thing is this continental shelf, these parameters also are satisfied. Now, to identify the continental shelf on a map, every country, every coastal country should have very detailed surveys, and they should have the detailed maps. Overall, the continental shelf plays a crucial role in shaping coastal environments, supporting marine ecosystems, and contributing to the economies of coastal nations. Now, Sri Lanka's continental shelf and continuous zone. In summary, while both the continental shelf and continuous zones are maritime zones related to the coastal state's sovereignty and jurisdictions. Now, again, I will show you the map. Otherwise, these definitions may be somewhat difficult. Now, territorial sea near to the mainland. Then after that, continuous zone. Now, continental shelf may be within this territorial sea, or maybe somewhat extend to the continuous zone, or maybe depend on the parameters, it could extend up to this exclusive economic zone as well. It depends on the seabed. Now, in our country, they mention our territorial sea around 18,060 kilometers squared. Continuous zone is around 19,620 kilometers squared, but I couldn't find the amount of continental shelf. Maybe these values are not well defined. The continental shelf primarily concerns the exploration and exploitation of natural resources, while continuous zone allows coastal zones to enforce specific laws and regulations beyond their territorial sea. Now, our key point you have to take is up to continuous zone, that particular country, or let's say Sri Lanka, can enforce our laws, but now I explained previously, within the continuous zone, country can apply some limited laws, but territorial sea, full law can apply. In continental shelf, primary concerns the exploration and exploitation of natural resources. Now, when you look at our geography, our continental shelf is within our territorial sea, but it's not same as territorial sea, because our gradients and the depth, that those things will differ all over the area. Now, other main definition is we call the Sri Lanka's exclusive economic zone. Now, this exclusive economic zone that is defined, now you can see it's a huge sea area. But in this exclusive economic zone, all the things are not belongs to the country. Now, we'll see what are the advantages, what are the benefits of having such an area. The exclusive economic zone is a maritime zone defined under international law. Now, that's the convention. It extends from the baseline of a coastal state up to 200 nautical miles. It's around 370 kilometers from the coast or to the maritime boundary within another coastal state if it is less than 400 nautical miles wide. Now here our exclusive, now it's mentioned as 200 nautical miles, but here since we do not have any other country within this vicinity of our country along this area, we can get our maximum benefit having 200 nautical miles or 360 kilometers. But now these areas, you can see, we can't get like that, right? Now this is EEZ belongs to India, EEZ belongs to the Maldives. Now there are other sovereign nations on northern side and the western side as well. Eastern, southern, Sri Lanka having the maximum benefit of getting the exclusive economic zone to our country. Key features and purposes of exclusive economic zone. Now country having the resources rights. Now within this EEZ, a coastal state has exclusive rights to explore and exploit natural resources found in the water column on the seabed and beneath the seabed. These resources include fish, oil, gas, mineral, and renewable energy sources like wind and waves. Now you can see what are the resources within these zones. Fish, okay, fish will maybe there, oil, gas, minerals, renewable energy, wind and wave. Now, in our case, except oil and gas, we are having minerals and renewable energy, but up to now, we have not utilize renewable energy sources like wind and waves in this EEZ, but oil and gas exploration we have carried out. That part I will explain to you later. Now, other key features, now that means resource rights will be there. Then jurisdiction, also we are having the coastal state has sovereign rights for the purpose of exploring, exploiting, conserving, and managing the natural resources. Now, whatever the natural resources within the EEZ belongs to a particular coastal state. However, other states enjoy freedoms of navigation and overflight, laying submarine cables and pipelines, and scientific research in EEZ subject to the coastal state's regulation. Now, I think you may have heard about this Chinese ship. They arrived to Sri Lanka to do some coastal scientific research and other things. So many things, because since we are not a rich country, up to now, we couldn't do a proper analysis on our actually sometimes maybe within the territorial sea itself we may not be able to do the proper surveys, but definitely he said up to now we couldn't do the proper surveys and identify what are the resources, but I will explain what kind of surveys we have carried out up to now. Then also environmental protection. The coastal state is responsible for the protection and preservation of the marine environment within its EEZ. Now that's also important thing. Why these zones are defined? Otherwise, no one will have a responsibility or accountability for the marine environmental protection. Now, now this UN convention itself they have identified these zones. Mainly, their main intention is they will give the exclusive rights to these coastal states, but they have to protect the marine environment through their environmental protection laws and other things. It must take measures to prevent, reduce, and control pollution from various sources, including ships, dumping, and activities on land that may impact the marine environment. Now, this is very important thing. Now, I think everyone knows there are so many garbage disposals or the dumping of other chemicals, most those kind of things, so many countries, they are carried out in the high seas. Now, okay, they may can dump these things the international waters. That means beyond the economic zone. That's a different story. But now you can think what kind of facilities the country like Sri Lanka should have to monitor all these illegal things, or maybe the activities carried out by the other ships, or maybe the other countries in the EEZ belongs to Sri Lanka as well. Now, since we do not have such sophisticated equipment, we may not be able to observe all these things. Now, other things, exclusive jurisdiction. Coastal states has the exclusive right to regulate fishing, marine scientific research, and the exploitation of non-living resources such as oil and gas within its EEZ. It can also establish laws and regulations related to the marine pollution, navigation, and other activities in this zone. Now, in Sri Lanka also, we are having marine environmental protection body of this EEZ. Then intervention encourages coastal states to cooperate with each other and to ensure the sustainable management of marine resources, conservation of marine environment, and peaceful use of the sea. Now, country like Sri Lanka, mainly we do not have sufficient funds or the money to carry out these surveys to establish the marine resources or maybe the conservation. Now, recently we had huge disasters like two ships, I think, uh, had some fire and had a big issue. Maybe that has have a huge impact to the environment. Now, for the fire extinguishing of this kind of activity, our country alone cannot be handled because it's very costly and also very difficult exercise. And also you need lot of other chemicals and so many manpower with different expertise, all the things. Now, that kind of things, we need the international cooperation to carry out the conservation of the marine environment. Now, I think previous occasions, Indian government, they they sent their ships also to extinguish the fire. The overall, the exclusive economic zone provides coastal states with significant rights and responsibilities over marine resources and activities within the specified area adjacent to their coastlines. It plays a crucial role in the management and conservation of ocean resources as well as in promoting international cooperation for sustainable development and protection of the marine environment. I think now you can get some idea about the benefits of having these specific areas: territorial sea, contiguous zone, and exclusive zone, and what kind of resources available in these things we will learn later. Then we will mainly learn about, now we uh, learn about the zones. Now what do you mean by the territorial boundary? Now this is two things. Now here, territorial boundary, also known as the national boundary or border, is a demarcation line that separate one country from another or delineate the territorial extent of the sovereign state. These boundaries define the geographical limits of a nation, authority and control over its land, water and airspace. Now this territorial boundary, it's up to this, normally up to EEZ. Now that we are having the legal basis, territorial boundaries are established and recognized through various means, including treaties, agreements, historical documents, and customary international law. They are often defined by geographical features such as rivers, mountain range, or artificial markers like border posts or fences. Now here, this generalized definition, now some countries, it's like a landlocked country. Now, in our Sri Lankan situation, we are an island nation, and actually, we are having a real boundary with India. All the other parts, we do not have a, some boundary. That means country to country boundary. You can't observe. Uh, okay, maybe that EEZ of Maldives will lies somewhere in the far western side of the Sri Lankan seas. And then this is the legal basis. Then now this territorial boundary, sovereignty and jurisdiction, territorial boundaries represent the outer limits of the nation's sovereignty and jurisdiction. Now, up to that level, Sri Lankan jurisdiction is valid. Within its territorial boundaries, a state exercises exclusive authority over its governance, law enforcement, and regulation of activities. But okay, now somewhat some linear rules and laws will apply in far, that means the distance will prevail. That's the main thing I want to emphasize. Then protection of territorial integrity. Now I think these words, most of our politicians, they are talking about territorial integrity, but as an engineer, we should know what do you mean by these things. Territorial boundaries serve to safeguard a nation's territorial integrity and security by regulating the movement of people, goods, and military forces across borders. Border control measures such as immigration checks and custom inspections are implemented to enforce these boundaries. Now, these boundaries, now they have defined these boundaries to all countries, not only the purely island nations like Sri Lanka. Now you can see most of the countries, that means within the mainlands, having some countries having, okay, uh, only one side facing to the sea, all other parts of the country having boundaries within another country, or some countries having, it's like a landlocked country. All over the country is having different boundaries with different countries, or maybe it's like a country within a country. That kind of situation also may happen. Then recognition by other states. These territorial boundaries are typically recognized and respected by other states through diplomatic channels and international agreements. These agreements, dispute over territorial boundaries can arise due to conflicting historical claims, ethnic or cultural divisions, or disagreements over the interpretation of legal documents. Now, I think most of the countries, now in Sri Lankan case also, this Kachatiu Island, there are disputes. Maybe the conflicting historical claims. Now, that's the main thing. Now, when you look at the China seas, now there are so many disputes with China, with Philippines, Japan, Korea, all the countries, because China claims, since China is some bigger country and having some uh, powerful nation, they wants to control the South China Seas. Now, when they want to control the South China Seas, then there are disputes, although there are agreements or treaties, but historically they claim these areas belongs to them, and there are consistent disputes among these countries. In our case, we are having such a situation mainly in the Kachatiu Island, and now I think recently also Tamil Nadu government they have passed the resolution to request Indian government to officially request to hand over the Kachatiu Island to the India. Border management. Governments are responsible for managing and maintaining their territorial boundaries, including border infrastructure, security measures, and cross-border cooperation with neighboring countries. Border management agencies and international organizations may be involved in facilitating trade, travel, and cooperation across borders. Now, in our country, we do not have such a border management along these territorial seas. Uh, Now, whatever the airport in Sri Lanka or the shipping ports or maybe Jaffna airport, they are carrying out flight transportation, or ship Colombo port, they will carry out the passenger or the goods transport. But you can see there are so much other illegal way of crossings are carried out, or the trading are carried out by Sri Lankan fishermen and the Indian fishermen and those things. These things we have to manage through the border management systems, but mainly due to the closeness of two countries and the similarity of the people living in northern and the southern parts of the Sri Lanka, they are having some cultural uh, engagements. Then, and sometimes you may think they think Sri Lanka also considered as their market. Maybe so many illegal things they will send through the boat, because the borderline around 20 kilometers, when you travel through a fishing boat, you will go to the Indian territory. Then there are so many trading activities happen in these things, and both countries should control these things. It's up to the legal systems to stop these illegal things. Then resolution of disputes. Now, disputes over territorial boundaries are often resolved through diplomatic negotiations, arbitration, or legal mechanisms such as international courts or tribunals. However, some disputes may remain unresolved for extended periods, leads to tension and conflict between the nations. Now, here main thing is most of the countries, they are not recognizing the accountability or the responsibility of the territorial seas or their economic zones. They think they can go and capture the resources within other country economic zones. Then maybe uh, high powered countries, they are utilizing all these resources while they are having sufficient funds or the investments. They can buy sophisticated ships, all the things, and they are exploiting all these natural resources. Now, you can see most of the time Indian fishermen, they are coming to Sri Lankan waters and capture the Sri Lankan, that means fish belongs to the Sri Lankan territorial seas. Now, every time this northern area, you may heard that our navy has captured all the seas, the navy, Indian fishing trawlers like that. That conflict is almost every time there. Then, if such dispute happen, normally this diplomatic negotiations or through the arbitration, these things will solve. Now, it's very rarely we can see that Sri Lankan government has filed a court case against the Indian fishermen. Normally, Indian diplomatic missions and Sri Lankan diplomatic missions, they mutually discuss and release these fishermen. That overall territorial boundaries are fundamental to the concept of statehood and play a crucial role in shaping international relations, governance, and security. They represent the geographic and political divisions between nations and are essential for maintaining order, stability, and global community. Now, we'll see what are the resources within these territorial waters. Now, main resource is fisheries. Now, I am not going into the details about these things. Maybe sometimes you may know better than me as well. Now, this fishing resource. Now, fisheries resource within the territorial waters of a country that is belongs to the coastal state. Now, coastal states have exclusive rights to regulate and exploit the fisheries within their territorial waters, which can be significant source of food and income through commercial fishing activities. Now, most of the Sri Lankan fishermen also now here you can see territorial sea, a contiguous zone, and EEZ is there. Now, you can observe that some fishing trawlers, they will go far away distances and they may capture the fish, and some trawlers, they go to the international waters as well. Now, when they go to the international waters, there are no specific country to control the resources within these international waters, but within the exclusive economic zones, that particular coastal state, they have to they have the exclusive rights to regulate and exploit the resources. Now, specifically fishing resource. Then, other part is the oil and gas reserves. Many coastal areas have significant deposits of oil and natural gas beneath the seabed within their territorial waters. Then coastal states have sovereign rights to explore, exploit, and manage these hydrocarbon resources either through direction, extraction, or by granting licenses. Now, in our country also, I will show you my next slides. we have our country also uh, carried out all these surveys and other things to explore the oil and gas reserves. Then other thing is the mineral resources. Territorial waters may also contain valuable mineral deposits, including sand, gravel, manganese, nodules, and rare earth elements. Now, in our country, we know only the mainly the eastern belt. We are having this ilmenite, that other sands. Now, you can imagine whatever how much foreign currency we are earning by exporting these resources. Coastal states have jurisdiction over the exploration and exploitation of these mineral resources, subjected to the environment regulations and sustainable management practices. Now, that's a must. Now, whatever the mineral resource available within these territorial waters, you may not be able to exploit or the extract if that cause or the impact on the marine environment. Now, to get the concurrence or the confirmation or the clearance, you may have to do so many environmental impact assessments related to these things. Then renewable energy sources. Coastal areas are often suitable locations for harnessing renewable energy sources such as wind, waves, and tidal currents. Uh, Coastal states can develop offshore wind farms, wave energy converters, and tidal power plants within their territorial waters to generate electricity and reduce reliance on fossil fuel. Now that's a must. That means it's a very big resource. Up to now, we haven't explored. Now in our country, now I think everyone knows that in Mana area, we have a 100 megawatt wind park, but it's a onshore facility. That means along the coastal belt, coastal belt onshore. But if you go to offshore facility, we can get more very high winds, and we can capture more, harness the more renewable energy sources, but it may a costly solution. Normally, most of the countries, first they will harness all the onshore facilities, then they may have some international agreements or maybe the collaborations to harness the offshore resources. But when you go to the European countries, they have harnessed so much uh, offshore wind resources. Uh, Other main advantage of offshore wind plants is their capacities are very high. Now, normally in onshore wind plants, we are implementing around, let's say, maximum around 4 megawatt, 5 megawatt power plants. But in offshore conditions, it could vary. One turbine can vary up to 15 megawatt, 20 megawatt. But you can see the cost associated with that kind of construction and transferring power to the coastal country state. Uh, then tourism and recreation, that's also very important thing. Now, since Sri Lanka is an island nation, there are so many tourism and recreation activities along this coastal belt. Uh, Territorial waters attract tourists and recreational activities such as boating, sailing, diving, and snorkeling. All these things are main tourist attractive activities. Now, Sri Lanka also having all these activities. Coastal states can promote tourism and ecotourism within the territorial waters. Uh, Contributing to local economies and providing employment opportunities in the hospitality and leisure sectors. Now, you can just think now, after our economic crisis, our main savior is the tourism industry, and most of the tourists, they come to Sri Lanka mainly to enjoy the sea ocean areas and the activities related to the recreational activities mainly related to the ocean areas. Now that's a very important uh, commercial activity, and that's a resource within the territorial waters. Then transportation and trade routes. Territorial waters serve as a vital transportation routes for maritime trade and commerce, enabling the movement of goods, passengers, and vessels between ports and international destinations. Coastal states can collect revenue from port fees, navigation charges, and custom duties on goods transiting through their territorial waters. Now it's like that. Now, when the shipping lines or whatever the transportation method passing through the territorial waters, they have to pay for some navigation charge. That's a very important thing. Then we'll see what are the resources within the territorial waters. Now, this is the marine environment baseline surveys carried out up to now in Sri Lankan EEZ. That means exclusive economic zone, that is 200 nautical miles from the baseline. Now you can see they have done some surveys only in these two basins. Now one basin they have identified as the Mana basin, other basin they identified as the Kaveri basin. Now these are the two basins. Up to now, Sri Lanka has carried out some survey. Now, that does not mean they have carried out very thorough surveys, but these two basins, they have mainly carried out to explore any resources related to the natural gas or the oil. Now, you can see still it's like 1/3 of, I don't know, not one, oh, okay, maybe it's like around 20-30% of our total is maybe around 25% is. Now, there are huge area. Up to now, Sri Lanka could not do any detailed marine environment baseline. Now here, that's a marine environmental baseline survey. Once you do the baseline survey, you have to do the detailed survey. Now, we'll learn about one by one now. Now here, first one is the fisheries. Now, fisheries, when you consider the fisheries, there are fishery sector includes both artisanal, that means artisanal means It's like a small scale traditional fishing or an industrial large scale mechanized fishing activities. Now, here with this resource, that means as a fishing community, their main employment is capturing fishing, and therefore, and it's like a employment and also country's food security and livelihoods for coastal communities mainly depend on the fisheries sector. Now it's like a separate community and their livelihood mainly depend on the fishing, maybe the daily shipping, maybe they will use this artisanal. It's like a small scale or traditional methods they use or the large scale or mechanized activities. Then coastal and inland fisheries, Sri Lanka's fisheries resources are diverse with fishing activities occurring along country's extensive coastal line as well as in inland water bodies such as rivers, lakes and reservoirs. But here we are mainly focusing on the ocean activities. Then also when you identify it as the fisheries, do not think it will limit only for the capturing fishing from the ocean. Inland fishing also there. Then other main thing is aquaculture. That also belongs to the fisheries resource. Aquaculture is also an important component of Sri Lanka's fisheries sector. Within cultivation of fish, mainly they do the fish, shrimp and prawns in ponds, tanks and cages. Employment and livelihood, the fisheries sector is a major source of employment and income of coastal communities. Now these the shrimps and prawns, that also, okay, maybe they can do as a inland fishing activity, or maybe the special areas identified within the lakes and not sea lake, some lakes, or maybe the lagoons, those kind of things. Then those areas, now let's say if you want to do the shrimps or the prawns, definitely they have to use the sea water and other activities. Now here, okay, my main focus on the ocean area, but when you identify as the fishing territorial waters, now when you consider the within territorial waters, means it it comprises inland and the ocean as well. Then export and domestic consumption. Sri Lanka's fisheries products are consumed domestically and export to the international markets. Now you know that most of these tuna fish Sri Lanka will export. Then challenges and sustainability. The fisheries sector in Sri Lanka faces various challenges, including overfishing, habitat degradation, illegal fishing practices, climate change impacts, and conflict over access of fishing grounds. Overall, fisheries sector is an integral part of Sri Lanka's economy, culture, and food security. Substantial management and conservation efforts are crucial for maintaining healthy fisheries ecosystems and supporting the livelihood of coastal economies. Now, that's the main things I want to highlight. The fisheries sector as a resources within the territorial waters. Now, other main thing is these marine mammal parks, marine mammal based data, that also our country has done some resource identification. I think you may have also, sometimes you may have gone to watch these whales along this Miris area. Same way, this Kalpitia area, that area also you can watch the whales. Then other main area is Trincomalee. Now, why these things are important? Now, when these things are identified, then automatically every sector within the every stakeholders they will try to conserve or preserve these areas. While now this Mirissa Kalpitiya Trincomalee, this whale watching is a attractive tourist recreation activity. Now it's a very different business. Now within the ocean, within the territorial sea, in addition to the capturing fishing, they do this kind of activities as well. Now, other areas, let's say if you go to Ampara, this Kalmuni area and go and if you want to watch the whales, maybe those areas they have not identified yet, but maybe sometimes you can see a whale, but that does not mean it's a area designated for the whale watching. Now, then other main thing is the oil and gas reserves. Now, exploration of oil and gas in Sri Lanka offshore areas has been limited, and there have been both domestic and international efforts to assess the country's hydrocarbon potential. Now, some seismic surveys and drilling activities have been carried out, but up to now, we could not identify the gas or the oil in that means to extract as a commercial feasible manner. But there are some activities. Now here, these are the resource identification maps they have identified. Now they mention now Kaveri Basin here. They have done some survey. Then Mana Basin, this area, and other basins they have mentioned as the Lanka Basin, but they have not done in detail analysis. But here they have done some analysis, and here now I will show. Now the only these two areas they have identified. Now to identify the oil and gas resources, they have to split these areas as a grid, and they have to do very thorough marine surveys. These are very expensive activities, and our main issue is they have identified some quantities. That is, they have identified as one as called the Dorado, and other one is they have identified as the Barracuda. Those are the two locations they have identified. But the issue is this natural gas, they identified some natural gas resources within those areas, but the depth of the sea is around 4 kilometers. Now, extracting the natural gas from around 4 kilometers depth of the sea is not commercially viable. The cost of the gas at the ground level is very high. Then it would be economical to buy the gas from other country. Now this is natural gas, but if Sri Lanka could able to explore this gas, then this gas belongs to the Sri Lankan state. Then other thing is the renewable energy. Now that's also very important topic everyone is talking about. Now we are having offshore wind energy, huge wind energy potential, but up to now uh, we we didn't do any proper survey to identify what are the most optimal sites. That's the thing. Now, key points regarding the offshore wind energy in Sri Lanka, we have to identify the potential sites. Now, here, now our country, or now since it's island nation, but everywhere that wind potential is not there. But definitely, now our Mana, Punareen, that this belt up to Putlam, definitely now at present we are having our onshore wind power plant along this Putlam Kalpitiya area, then Mana. Now in future we are having Punareen, this Silavatura, this belt. Now uh, with the onshore resources, we can definitely assume that we are having these offshore wind resources. Then when we develop these offshore wind resources, then we should not go beyond our maritime boundary. We have to see, we have to develop within our maritime boundaries. Then maybe since it's very closer to India, then you can imagine what kind of geopolitical situations we may have to face, all the things we have to think. Now here, Sri Lanka coastal areas offer potential sites for offshore wind farms, particularly along the western southern coast where wind speeds are relatively high. These areas wind speed and other main thing is uh, our monsoon directions. That's also very important things. But up to now, we didn't do any further analysis on potential sites. Once we identify the potential sites, definitely we have to carry out the feasibility studies. Now, these studies must involve analyzing the wind resources, ocean conditions, and the main thing is the grid connectivity, regulatory frameworks, and stakeholder engagement. Now, the stakeholder engagement is very important. Now, whether our country having this kind of technical competency to carry out this kind of work. Okay, let's say if we have the technical competency through the engineering and other things, whether we have the sufficient investment to carry out these things. Now, after investing, whether we can get the grid connectivity to these power plants. That's also very important thing. Then definitely to explore the renewable energy, government should initiate these activities. Then definitely Sri Lankan government itself may not able to carry out or initiate these activities. Definitely they have to collaborate with the international agencies to carry out these potential, first to identify the potential sites, then to carry out the project feasibility studies. If it is feasible, then project planning and implementation works. Other main thing is not only the wind, maybe you can see the wave energy or the tidal energy as well. But still, these technologies are somewhat expensive than the conventional technologies, and it may not be economically feasible to develop, because ultimate objective of a country is to provide the electricity at least cost to the consumers. Okay, maybe if we develop these kind of sites, still the international costs of developing this kind of project also may be somewhat higher, and our overall electricity prices may not be competitive. Then what are the challenges and consideration? Developing offshore wind energy in Sri Lanka may face challenges, mainly the technical complexities, high upfront costs, then environmental impact assessment, regulatory frameworks, then so many international laws and conventions we may have to think about, then stakeholder consultation. Now, if we can address these challenges, definitely there should be a collaboration among the government agencies, private sector, stakeholders, and other local communities to build up this kind of renewable energy resource. Then other main thing is the transportation and trade routes. Now in our country, you know that our ports there are several ports. One is the Colombo port, other one is the Hambantota port. Now these ports, uh, that facilitates the maritime routes connecting the Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and the Europe. Now, our country's location, it's very much strategic. That means whatever the shipping lines passes through these Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Europe from these directions, they may have to stop in Sri Lankan, whatever the port, maybe for the fueling or maybe the transshipment or whatever the activity. Now that's the main advantages. Now these ports also constructed within the coastal belt. Now that's also a resource. Now these ports are also now Colombo, Hambantota, then Trincomalee port, Gold port, all the ports, those ports are facilitating the maritime trade routes. Now that's the main thing. Sri Lanka lies along several major maritime trade routes, including east-west shipping routes, and connect Asia with Europe via the Indian Ocean. Now, with our strategic location, we can be a global supply chain management country. Supply now, because most of the ships, they need, okay, fuel they need the other logistic like food, water, those things. Now, our country can serve this kind of facilities to the international, to facilitate the international maritime trades. Now, that's a very important thing. Now, other main thing is, now we have done some surveys regarding the resources within territorial waters to we have identified for the locations for power plants and port development. Now you can see these are the locations we have identified. Now there are now Trincomalee. Okay, previously there is a huge coal power plant proposed, but okay, later government cancelled that one. Now it is, now why we propose this kind of power plants in Trincomalee? Because we have to have a method to handle the fuel, that means the coal. Now to unload the coal, now very big ships should come into these ports. Now that means the Trincomalee Natural Harbour can facilitate this. Now there are some studies we have carried out to identify the Batticaloa area, Panama, Hambantota, Marvella. Now Marvella, there are small harbors are there, not the port, it's like harbor, but these harbors can develop as a small shipping ports. Now, these are the possible locations identified for the future port developments as well as future power plant developments associated with the port developments. Now, this is the Ambalangola area, Akurala, Athuruwalla, Colombo port, Kerawalapitiya. Now already they have developed the power plant. Then Kalpitiya, Putlam coal power plant with the jetty. Now, when these studies were carried out, main concerns they have uh, taken care is the depth of the sea. That's also you have to carefully carry it out, analyze. Now here you can see wind power plants along this Putlam, Jaffna, those areas. Then now here within territorial waters. Now within territorial waters means all these mini hydros, major hydros, all the things you can identify. Okay. Now with that I will go to the other part. And now main part is the Sri Lankan maritime boundary. That part I have carried out. Now other thing is the, now this particular topic having the Sri Lankan heritage also. Now okay, I am not going into the details about this one. Just I will give you some basic framework, what kind of things you should look into about this particular topic. Now, ancient heritage, vandalism, and preservation. Now, I think everyone knows about our country having a history back over 2,500 years. Okay, mainly it's like a Buddhist culture that was there. Uh, these sites are not only crucial understanding island past, but also serve as pivotal cultural and religious landmarks. Now here there are so many cultural, and now if you go to Trincomalee, you can see so many Hindu religion things. Then if you go to the Anuradhapura, that those areas, it's mainly related to the Buddhism. When you go to the Jaffna area, then again, there are so many ancient heritage you can find out. Then when you go to the southern part, then that heritage mainly due to the colonization. Now it's like that. Uh, we can identify several eras. Now there are preservation effects, and mainly the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Sri Lanka has some ancient heritage sites have been recognized by the UNESCO as World Heritage Sites, including ancient cities of Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Sigiriya, Golden Temple, uh, Dambulla, then old town of Gold and its fortifications. Now, this ancient heritage, how do we preserve? That's the other main concern Sri Lanka to overcome these challenges to preserve these treasures and dealing with instance of vandalism. Now, who are the people having that authority? Mainly the Department of Archaeology. The Sri Lankan Department of Archaeology plays a key role in preservation of ancient heritage sites. This includes conducting excavations, restorations, and maintaining sites to ensure their longevity and accessibility for the future generation. Okay, now here you can just compare how they preserve these things, then what kind of thing they are carrying out. Okay, there are pros and cons, but as a legally, they have given the authority to the Department of Archaeology for these ancient heritage sites. Then for these preservation efforts, and definitely there are so much international support. Now, once this UNESCO, they identified it as a World Heritage Sites, then this UNESCO, they are giving funds. Also, the other NGOs, they are also very much caring about this heritage conservation. This includes funding for restoration projects, educational programs to raise awareness about the importance of heritage sites and initiatives to promote sustainable tourism that respect the preserves historical site. Now you can imagine, just think about Sigiriya. Now it's a site that means so many conservation and the preservation activities are carried out. Now you can imagine the tourist attraction. Now that's the main important thing about the ancient heritage. Then what are the challenges and we are facing? And these ancient heritage sites face several challenges, mainly vandalism. Now that is the main issue about the vandalism. Okay, people may think some treasures are there, they can sell these things to the people. It's having a some historical value because they want these things to sell for the tourists or maybe the other people. and they know that they are having a very historical value. Then other main thing is natural wear and tear. Now with our history, it's around 2500 years back. Then now just think about these Buddhist stupas and other things. Now it's having the natural wear and tear. Now with this natural wear and tear, there is a huge challenge to preserve these sites to the next generation. Then tourism pressure. While tourism is significant source of revenue, unregulated tourism can lead to damage, overcrowding, littering, and inappropriate behavior by visitors can contribute to deterioration of heritage sites. Now, here this tourism, not only the foreign tourism, local tourism as well. Now, just think about some long weekend. There will be flock of people uh, within these sites, and it's like overcrowding. This now imagine now people for the Sigiri or some place, eh, what will happen to the overcrowding? Then it would be very difficult to preserve these heritage sites. There are so much damages these people will do. Another thing is uh, due to their behavior, there are so many deterioration of these sites. Then the economic and political factors as well. Now, preservation efforts can sometimes be hampered by economic constraints. Now, I think we are passing through very severe economic crisis. Now, to preserve these sites, you need lot of money to invest. Now, when we have this kind of economic crisis, definitely as a first instance, governments may uh, restrict the funds to Department of Archaeology. Then these preservation activities may have an impact. Then that means political instability or changes in policy focus leading to inadequate funding and resources for heritage conservation. Then what are the activities we can do moving forward to protect these preservation activities? Now, first thing is the enhance the protection measures. That is very important thing. Implementing stricter regulations and surveillances at heritage sites to prevent vandalism and theft. Now, other main thing is without having a very stringent laws and rules, it will be very difficult to prevent these vandalism and theft. Then other main thing is we have to engage with the community. Now, mainly the local communities, because now with the commercialization of these areas, this local community, every time they may try to exploit these sites because they know that their main income resource is this. Then when a tourist or maybe some other local tourists, maybe the foreign tourists or the local tourists, they visit these sites, they are trying to take maximum advantage. Then every time you have to engage with the local community, and you should give proper education and awareness to the community, because if you can teach them, their livelihood is based on these heritage sites and their responsibility to the preservation of these things, then automatically that mechanism will move towards to preservation activities than the vandalism. Then other main thing is sustainable tourism practices that also you have to encourage. That means minimize environmental impact and encourage respectful behavior by tourists. Now just think about the Adams Peak. Every day they are having these garbage cleaning activities. Now, so many boards, so many restrictions they have imposed. Do not bring the plastic bottles. Do not use these lunch sheets and other things. But okay, maybe during the season you can see these NGOs and other, maybe the forces or maybe the enthusiastic people, they are doing so many community works to clean this environment. Now that's the thing. Now for that, okay, maybe having stringent rules and regulation, or having the better community engagement, sustainable tourism practices, and also main important thing is the education and awareness. Now that's also very important thing for the heritage conservation among locals and tourists alike can play a crucial role in protecting ancient sites. Now we'll go to the final part of my presentation. Now that's the overexploitation of hill country against high environmental sensitivity. Now you know that our hill country, now other main advantage of Sri Lanka is since it's very small country, maybe within 2 to 3 hours from the Colombo city, you can reach the hill country area. Now it's a complete different climate conditions. Within 2 to 3 hours, you can achieve. That means you can feel. Now that means we are having very lush forests, diverse ecosystems, and unique biodiversity. In some countries, to get that kind of feeling, you may have to travel by a plane, or maybe you have to travel more than 10 to 12 hours. But within 3 to 4 hours, we can reach our hill country. That's the main advantage, or that's the main benefit of Sri Lanka to promote tourism related activities. But however, it faces significant challenges due to overexploitation and unsustainable practices which threaten its ecological integrity and long-term sustainability. Now here we can discuss so many things, but our main objective or the focus, we as engineers, we should mainly focus how to preserve this or how to implement these overexploitation challenges. Now, main thing is deforestation. Now, that's the main thing Sri Lanka is facing in the hill country. Extensive deforestation due to activities such as logging, agriculture expansion, and infrastructure development. Now, whether our developments are in line with this concept, that means with the sustainable development concepts. Now, we have to develop this infrastructure, but how do we manage the sustainability? That's also you have to think. Now, deforestation not only leads to habitat loss of endemic species, but also disrupts watershed, soil stability, and carbon sequestration. Now, just think about the soil stability now along the hill country. Whatever the rain or maybe the monsoon time, you can hear so many landslides. Now, I think around recent months, there are so many landslides, mainly why there are so many infrastructure development, mainly related to the road development activities and other things. Now they have they have cut the main hills, but whether these developments are carried out with the sustainable practices, that's the main thing. But you can't say you should not implement this particular infrastructure project, that should do, but you have to adopt these sustainable practices. Then illegal logging. That's also very uh, main thing, often driven by the demand of valuable timber species. Now, this illegal logging, now there are forest areas. Okay, maybe government giving permission to cut, or maybe the people, they are cutting these trees, mainly this timber, for the commercial purposes, but their conservation efforts are very less. There should be some mechanisms to, okay, now we have to cut these timber trees for the commercial purposes, but in parallel, there should be some preservation activities as well. Now, other main thing is the agricultural expansion. Now, in hill country, you can see tea, rubber, and vegetable cultivations. They have expanded into the forest areas as well. Now, when the commercial activities are more prioritized for the livelihood of the people, they will definitely expand their cultivations into the forest areas as well. Now, other main thing is the hydropower development, but now luckily Sri Lanka, we do not have any large-scale hydropower projects. Now, during the construction of these large-scale hydropower projects, significant environmental and social impacts were happened, but there are some mitigated reactions, but now only we are carrying out mainly the mini hydro projects. Now you can observe, or maybe previously you can heard that so many protests or the objections by the people for the development of mini hydro projects as well. Why? That will have some issues regarding the downstream water shortages, and that will have an impact to the downstream people. Then other main thing is the hill country is the soil erosion. Now that is unsuitable land use practices, such as improper land clearing and cultivation of steep slopes. Those are the things. Now these are the concepts I want to highlight, these things. Now other main thing is the biodiversity loss. The hill country of Sri Lanka is home to a rich diversity of flora and fauna, including many endemic species. Overexploitation and habitat destruction threaten to survival of these species, leading to a biodiversity loss and ecological imbalance. Then what are the things we can address to overcome this? Main thing is sustainable land use practices. Now, as a engineers, whoever, maybe the civil, mechanical, electrical, or whatever your profession, now everyone, most of the engineers, they engage with these development activities. Now they have to ensure that they will carry out their particular projects by adopting sustainable land use practices. Now that could lead to agriculture, or maybe the development of the project, whatever the things. Now as a citizen of Sri Lanka, you have to adopt sustainable land use practices. Now other main thing is the protected area management. Now these protected areas we have to manage. Now the issue is when when we want to develop our infrastructure, or expand our infrastructure, maybe it could be a road, or it could be a transmission line, then these developments may carry out through these protected areas. Now some roads, or maybe the transmission lines, maybe water projects to get the water to the downstream. Maybe you may lay the pipelines and other things. Then you have to have the proper sustainable practices to protect their area management and expanding con conservation effects in key biodiversity hotspots can help safeguard critical habitat and species in the hill country. Then we should have a proper regulatory framework. Now that's also not in Sri Lanka. Now for the every activity, whatever the activity we are carrying out these areas, then proper policies or the clearance method we have to ensure. Uh, issue is now with the development activities, once we give the priority to development, we, although we are having mitigatory measures identified in the documents, whether we are adopting these mitigatory actions is the most crucial issue. That part, as engineers, we have to look into. Then other main thing is we have to engage with the community. That's the main thing, and also the awareness and education that will help to prevent the overexploitation of hill country. But the issue is now, that's why I initially also told, we can discuss so many things, so many theories, but when we try to adopt these things in ground situation, whether we could adopt these things in successfully in the ground level. Now in ground level, there now when we look at the communities who are engaged, maybe very poor people, maybe their main livelihood is within that area, then whether this exploitation, whether we can give an alternative income methods to them. That's also you have to think. And when you look at the Sri Lankan history, that's also we have to do some part. Now, I'm not going into the details. Now, this is in prehistoric area is there, then the ancient period, early civilization, then, okay, there are kingdoms, Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, then during this period, Buddhism was there, Buddhism was introduced to Sri Lanka, then our cultural attitudes and all the things, the mainly centered through the Buddhism. Then we had some kingdoms and dynasties that is up to 1505. Then Portuguese came into the Sri Lanka. Then European encounters. Then the colonial period we had Portuguese, Dutch, British. Then after independence from 1948, then we had the ethnic conflict. Now after ethnic conflict, up to 2009, then it's like during the after the independence, what kind of country we had in 1972, we had the full democracy. Then ethnic conflict, outbreak of a civil war in 1983. Then 2009, we can have another year. Then post-war activities we had, and our country passed through, okay, maybe the prehistory. Now these are the activities. This is just, I want to give some slides for the completion. Early civilization, Anuradhapura kingdom, Polonnaruwa, Buddhism, kingdom of dynasties, then Portuguese, British, Dutch and British. Then we had the independence, then the ethnic conflict during that time. That's also we can consider as some critical period. Then after post-war reconstruction, but now again you can split, okay, maybe our COVID situation, we had some issues, then the economic crisis we had, those things we can see. Okay, with that I will conclude my part. I think I have covered all the points, but in here, please go through mainly the resources within these territorial waters. Now, mainly here, I will give two parts, mainly the resource, this maritime resources, and again some parts about why we need the preservations and conservation about these heritage sites and the hill country uh, over exploitation of the hill country. Just go through my notes. I think you may able to write down the question. That means you can respond to the question or answer to the question with your general knowledge. But I prefer if you could go through these notes, that will help you to write some logical answers, because this question definitely having a 25 marks. Now, this is also, I think, in the section 2, maybe. Now, previously I did the Sri Lankan national policy and then Sri Lankan economy. It's up to you to decide whether to write my question or not. It's up to you. But since this is a 25 mark question, try to elaborate some key points related to the each part of a question without writing just point forms. If you have anything to clarify, we can discuss. Please go through my notes. That's the main thing I want to emphasize. Do you have any questions? Then we wind up for today then. Okay, then wish you all the best for the exam. It's up to you to decide for the whether you are writing my question. That's the first thing, because there are so many questions you can select. It's up to you, but wish you all the best. Could you clarify that why both countries in India till not achieve sustainable solution? Okay, because one question you are asking, could you clarify that why both country till not achieve sustainable solution? I think your question is related to the Kachatu Island, because it's like a historic thing. Now, Indian people, because it's like a that location, there is some church or something is there. Everyone will go to do the prayers and other things. And I think that's the still Sri Lankan government, although it belongs to the Sri Lanka. Now, for this particular festival season, they will give, that means they will open for this particular festival. Any Indian fisherman, they can come and do their prayers and other things. It's like a historical issue. Okay. Now, those are the things normally should resolve through the diplomatic missions. Otherwise, normally, okay, I do not think India and Sri Lanka will have a war situation, but maybe some countries they will go for some war situation. Okay, then shall we? Okay, then we'll stop for today. I think my lectures, my modules are completed. Then wishing you all the best. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.